Since today is Gopal Bhakta Goswami's disappearance, I wasn't going to chant any particular shloka to begin with. I was going to jump right to Gopal Bhakta Goswami. I am jumping, and the microphone also is jumping. But as I thought more, I remembered a verse, and I thought I'd start with this verse, and it'll come full circle back to Gopal Bhakta Goswami. There is a very famous verse, Smartavya Satatam Vishnu, Vismartavya Najati Chit, Sarve Vidhi Nishedhasyur, Etayoreva Kinkara. So, in Govardhan, I was studying under His Grace Gopi Pranadhan Prabhu in the Sanskrit school there, Shun Bhagavad Vidyapith. And during Kartik, His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu would come to Govardhan, and we'd hold Bhagavad Katha in the Govardhan Palace. It's the ISKCON temple in Govardhan. And this Katha would go from morning to night. It was during Kartik, so it was an opportunity to be fully immersed in transcendental Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing, speaking and listening. And of course remembering Smartavya, which is the point of the verse I began with. And in this Katha, sometimes Vaisheshika Prabhu would play I say a little game, he didn't refer to it as such, but when you'd speak a verse, he'd go around the room, and if it reminded you of another verse, if a particular word brought to mind a word from another verse, then you could share it. And in this way, you'd jump all over Shastra, and you'd end up with verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita, from Bhagavatam, that shared some meaning or had some contextual similarities. And it was quite fun to travel in this way, go on a little journey, so to speak, through various verses. So beginning with this verse, Smartavya Satatam, which means always remember Vishnu. Smartavya Satatam Vishnu. Vismartavya Najatuchit. Never forget him. Sarve Vidhi Nishedhasur. All of the Vidhis and Nishedhas in Shastra. Vidhis are injunctions that must be followed, and Nishedhas are things to be avoided. All of those are Kinkara. They're maidservants. So these two principal ideas. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. So our philosophy, Rupa Goswami boiled it down to that. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. It's very simple. This is the whole Krishna consciousness movement, and everything else that you see is aimed at supporting those two factors. The temple, the devotees, the deities, everything is aimed at reminding us of Krishna and helping us to never forget him. And so remembering Krishna, I was playing this little game I mentioned with Vaisheshika Guru, and thinking about that verse, always remembering Krishna, I remember a very famous verse at the end of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sadhi bhutadi daivamma, sadhi yagya che viduhu, sadhi yagya che viduhu. This is the reason I mentioned it. Antakali pichamam, tevidur yukta chetasaham. That remembering Krishna, who is the Lord of the material manifestation, Adibhuta, and Adidaiva, Adhidaiva, he is the Lord of all the demigods and the Lord of all yagyas. Those who remember him are so fortunate they can even remember him at the time of death. Antakali Pichamam, Devadur Yukta Chetasa. Being so engaged in worshiping Krishna and remembering him during our lifetime, even at the time of death, it's possible to remember him. And Prabhupada writes in this purport, he says that death is really the test of how we've acted in our lives. That is the moment to reveal how our practices have resulted in a practical way. That even at the time of death, one is able to remember Krishna. This is proof of success in those life's practices. And so from remembering Krishna, I thought, from the verse Smartavya Satatam Vishnu, I remembered this verse at the end of the 7th chapter. And Prabhupada used to quote this verse in relation to a very famous prayer by King Kulashekar. Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjarantam Adhyaiva Me Vishukuman Sarantam Prana Prayana Same Kapavata Pittaye Kantavarodhana Vidhau Smaranam Kutascha. He's praying very humbly. How can I remember you at the time of death? Prana Prayana Same. When it's coming to the end of my life, and my throat, Kantavarodhana Vidhau, is being blocked by Kapha, Vata, and Pitta, by mucus, bile, and air. So many problems. How will it be possible to remember you? Very humbly praying that his mind be wrapped up in the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja. Your lotus feet, may the swan of my mind be always entangled in remembering. And so Prabhupada used to quote this, Prana Prayana Same has some similarities to the verse I just mentioned. My mind is going everywhere. Prayana Kale Pichamam. Prayana Kale Pichamam. The end of the 7th chapter says, even at the time of death, one can remember Krishna. Which brings me to, in the 8th chapter, in the beginning, it says, Yang Yang Smapi Swaram Bhavam Tyajatyante Kalevaram Tam Tam Evaiti Kaunteya Siddhartha Bhava Bhavita. That one's nature in one's next life is a direct result of what one is remembering at the time of death. Tyajatyante. At the time of leaving the body, where the consciousness is the place of entering the next birth. And this is very obvious even within the scope of one lifetime, even not accepting the concept of reincarnation. One can see that a student who very diligently studies and goes through school, it's to be understood that his chances of getting a good career, of entering into the profession of his choice, of having material prosperity, all of these things are maybe not guaranteed, but a strong likelihood. Because those are the things he's practiced. That's where his mind is moving. Those are the ways he's chosen to engage himself. And so similarly at the time of death, it's a stage, a passing through. So whatever consciousness one has at that time directly translates into his next body. And therefore, this verse, these two important factors, always remember Krishna, never forget him, become the foundation of our entire philosophy. Because at the time of death, by remembering Krishna, one is instantly transferred to the spiritual abode, which is the perfection of this life. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita, a very similar verse is stated. Katanchana smrite yasmin. Katanchana means somehow or other, by hook or by crook, one may say. Remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Katanchana smrite yasmin. Duskaram sukaram bhavet. Very difficult things become very easy by remembering Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the most difficult thing in this world is to control the senses. They're compared very often in Shastra to poisonous snakes. Our senses are dragging us in so many different directions. The eyes want to see something nice. The tongue wants to taste something nice. We want to lay in a soft bed. We want so many comforts. And this way the senses drag us all over the place. In a couple of places in Srimad Bhagavatam, it's stated that the senses are like having bhavyasa patni eva geha patim nunanti, like having many wives, bhavyasa patni. And in the minds of many men, that sounds very enjoyable. Oh, how nicely I'll enjoy with so many partners. But when each one is dragging you a different direction, wanting to enjoy, suddenly your position is geha lunanti. The word lunanti means destroyed. Your happiness is literally destroyed. Prabhupada very politely translates it as embarrassed. You're put in an embarrassed condition. But one's enjoyment or opportunities for enjoyment are destroyed when one is being dragged by the senses in all those different directions, becoming a servant of the senses, Godasa. So this little train of thought, these verses playing His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu's game, as I've called it, all spurred from my readings this morning about Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And actually in Kirtan, as we were chanting, Govinda Jaya Jaya Gopal Jaya Jaya, Radharamana Hari Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radharamana, the deities of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And so I was very happy when we were chanting that. I was remembering Vrindavan and Radharaman temple. But in reading about Gopal Bhatta Goswami, I was reading about the exalted nature of his parents. Venkata Bhatta was his father. And it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that his exalted parents passed away remembering Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when I thought about that, I thought about the verse Katanchana Smrite Yasmin, somehow or other remember Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada created the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan with Gaur-Nitai deities placed right by the side of Krishna Balaram to remind us that Krishna Balaram and Gaur-Nitai are non-different. That same Lord of Vrindavan of Braja has come again as Shachi Sutta, the son of Mother Shachi, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Balaram Ahoilo Nitai. And Balaram has come as Nitai. So remembering them, Gaur Nitai, all success in life is achieved. And if only it were so simple. Prabhupada said often, simple for the simple, complicated for the complicated. That when you're given a simple instruction, always remember Krishna, never forget Him, then automatically it follows that you do everything it takes for that goal, that aim to be achieved. That means taking rest early, waking up early, chanting your rounds, taking only Krishna prasadam. All of these things become a given. Because when we engage otherwise, it becomes more difficult to remember Him. And the second half of that verse, Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Duskaram Sukaram Bhavi. Very difficult things become very easy by remembering Him. Vismritya Viparitan Syad. And by forgetting Him, just the opposite. Even very simple things become very difficult. And we get Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And Krishna's giving him what might be considered a simple instruction. Fight for me. And for a Kshatriya, this is actually a simple request. They actually like to fight. This is something exciting for them. But Arjuna couldn't perform this simple task. He was overcome by grief. His Gandiva bow was slipping from his hand. Very shameful for a Kshatriya. His senses were telling him that he would enjoy more by not fighting. Indriyani manobuddhya asyadhishtana mochite. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence, adhishtanam, are the seating place of lust. Lust sounds like maybe a strong word. Oftentimes we give it a sexual connotation. But Chaitanya Charitamrita defines lust differently. Atmendriya priti vancha tare vali kama. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is lust. Krishnendriya priti tare dhare premanam. And the desire to satisfy the senses of Krishna. That's called prem. That's love. So the seating place of lust in the mind, in the intelligence, and in the senses means that the desire to enjoy these separately from Krishna. that desire is what muddies the waters of such a simple task. Always remember Krishna and never forget him. Desire. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami had exalted parents. Venkata Bhatta was his father, and his uncle was the very famous sannyasi Prabodhananda Saraswati, who's written Chaitanya Chandramrita, not Chaitanya Charitamrita, that was Krishna's courage. And the verses in Chaitanya Chandramrita, they take a similar meter to the Shad Goswami Ashtaka. And the reason I bring that up is because Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disciple was Srinivasa Acharya, and he wrote Shad Goswami Ashtaka. Now Gopal Bhatta Goswami is in the Gaudiya Vaishnava lineage. His spiritual master, Prabodhananda Saraswati, his spiritual master and uncle, the sannyasi, was a Ramanujacharya disciple. They were in South India, Sri Rangam, and Ramanujacharya, a very prominent saint in South India. And he also has a commentary on Gita. And this is a point I derived from a seminar by His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Swami not too long ago. Actually, it feels not too long ago, but I think it was some time ago now. But the point stuck with me so firmly. He was explaining the verse, Indriyani paranyahu, indriyebhya param manah, manasastu parabuddhir yo buddhi paratastu saha. Delineating the levels of superiority. Above dull matter are the senses. It's through the senses that we enjoy or suffer material nature. And above the senses is the mind. Above the mind is intelligence. And yo buddhi paratastu saha. Above the intelligence is that, saha. So Baladev Vidya Bhushan says that saha refers to the soul. And Prabhupada, in following Baladev Vidya Bhushan, writes that in our Bhagavad Gita as it is, that above the intelligence is the soul. And in the Vaishnava commentary by Ramanujacharya, he says above the intelligence is saha, that, desire. Above the intelligence is desire. Whether the desire manifests as satisfying one's own senses or satisfying the senses of Krishna is what dictates our path. Ultimately, free will boils down to these two things. Of course, if you're on a highway, you have the free will to change lanes or to look left or look right. But ultimately, your free will is either you're driving with traffic or you're spinning around and you're colliding with traffic, going in the wrong direction. Ultimately, that free will is there. Either you're moving towards the supreme destination, controlling the mind and senses, or you're moving against the natural flow of material nature. And when you move against this flow, there will be so many collisions, so many tribulations. Material nature throws obstacles in our path constantly. That actually reminds me of a very nice verse. Just like Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjaranta. Let the swan of my mind be entangled in the lotus feet of Krishna. Similarly in Sri Brahma Samhita, there's a prayer about removing obstacles. Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose two lotus feet are held by Lord Ganesh, the remover of obstacles. Yat pada pallavayam vinidhaya kumbham vande pranam samaye. I'm actually mixing the two. I'm going to look up the verse so that we have accuracy. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I am remembrance and forgetfulness. So even when we forget a verse, that's also by Krishna's grace. We get to be humble. Yat pada pallavam vinidhaya kumbham Vande pranam samaye sagana hiraja Vigna viham tomarmasya jagat trayasam Govindamari purusham tamam bhajami Govindamari purusham tamam bhajami Vignan vihantum alamasya jagatrayasya. Lord Ganesha is removing these obstacles, and he does so grasping the two lotus feet of Krishna. So by worshipping Krishna, by remembering Krishna, very difficult things to overcome become very easy. And even the serpent-like senses that drag us left and right, that capture our mind and try to distract us from remembering Krishna, they become toothless. Prabodhananda Saraswati, the spiritual master of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, whose disappearance it is today, has written a very famous verse. Kaivalyam narakayati tridashapur akasha pushpayati. He says Kaivalyam narakayati. Kaivalya, the merging with the Supreme, this impersonal merging, is compared to a hellish condition, narakayati. And tridasha means 3 times 10. 30 or 33. There are 33 million demigods. Tridashapur. Akasha pushpayati. There's a Sanskrit idiom. In English we say sometimes pie in the sky, if you've heard that phrase. Pie in the sky is phantasmagoria. Something that there's no tangible reality there. So in Sanskrit they say akasha pushpa, which means very similar concept, flower in the sky. Tridashapur akasha pushpayate. Impersonal merging with the Supreme is a hellish condition. And the life of the demigods, which has so much opportunity for sense gratification, is a flower in the sky, ephemeral phantasmagoria. Durdantendriya Sarpakala Patali Protkata Dangstrayate. Dur Danta Indriya. Dur means very intense. Danta Indriya, the very of the sarpa, of the snake, the very sharp, dangerous teeth of the poisonous snake, the senses, Indriya. They become Protkata Dangstrayate. Protkata means taken away, extracted. The broken fangs of a serpent. The senses, although so powerful, dragging us left and right, capable of driving men to build great skyscrapers for self-adoration, for some sense of fame. It drives people to work so hard, day and night. Which reminds me of the Bhajavariyamala verse. Maybe we'll sing that in a moment. But these senses, which are so powerful that they're driving us to perform so many sinful activities, just for some flickering happiness, chapala sukha labha, they become like snakes with broken fangs. The obstacle is removed through devotional service, through remembering Krishna, positive engagement. Does anyone remember how the second verse of Vajrayana goes? How it begins? Sita Atava. Sita Atava Bata Barisha. Sita, cold, Atava, heat, Bata Barisha, wind and rain, Edine Jamini Jagre, day and night, I'm awake suffering from this inclement weather of material nature. Sita Tava Bhatavarisha Edine Jamini Jagre. And why do I suffer through these various awful conditions? Vipale Sivino Kripana Durjana. Vipale Sivino Kripana Durjana. Serving wicked and miserly men, serving the senses. Chapala Sukalabha Labhi. Chapala Sukalabha Labhi. Chapala Sukalabha Labhi. Chapala means flickering. Sukha, happiness. A happiness that doesn't last. Ephemeral, Akasha Pushpa. Even millions of years in the lifetime of a demigod. Enjoying riches greater than the greatest kings that ever lived. His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj wrote a devotional commentary on the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, which is often attributed to King Solomon, a great wise king. And in that book, he goes through every type of enjoyment possible. He eats the most amazing feasts, he sleeps in the most comfortable beds, he has the most beautiful partners, he has all the riches and enjoyments of a king. And yet, it all came down to vanity. Vanity not in the sense of self-absorbed one's own looks, but vanity in terms of uselessness. All of that enjoyment came to naught because Chapala Sukha Labha Lagi. You're chasing after a happiness which has a beginning and an end. And Bhagavad Gita states that one who is truly intelligent doesn't partake in the enjoyments that have a beginning and an end. They're temporary. Lasting happiness comes with devotional service, with remembering Krishna and achieving the supreme destination, the spiritual abode, where there is no beginning and end, there is no birth, death, old age, and disease, janma, mrityu, jara, vyadhi. Dukkha, doshana, darshanam. These are the causes of dukkha, of unhappiness, birth, death, old age, and disease. And the means of relieving ourselves from this distress is devotional service. The chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And by chanting this Maha Mantra, we're drowned in oceans of bliss instead of the material ocean of samsara. Anandam buddhivardhanaikanipano kaivalyanistarako Mandirupa sanatana raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalko. Written in the same meter as Sri Chaitanya Chandramrita by Prabodhananda Saraswati is his grand disciple, Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disciple Srinivasa Acharya wrote Shat Goswami Ashtaka. And I like to think that there might be some connection between these two statements. He says, Kaivalya Nistaraka, that the 6 Goswamis are rescuing the conditioned souls from the mouth, the dangerous mouth of Kaivalya, this desire for impersonal liberation. And Prabodhananda Saraswati, in the verse I quoted earlier, he begins it with Kaivalyam Narakayate, that is compared to a hellish condition. And why does he say it's a hellish condition? It's a form of liberation. The very word liberation brings to mind thoughts of enjoyment, of happiness, bliss, ananda. But he says it's a hellish condition because there's no service. And the dharma of the soul is service. Just like the dharma, the quality of water is to be moist, it's to be wet. The dharma of fire is to give heat and light. If you separate the purpose, the very principle that something is acting on, it becomes useless. And if it's useless, that's hellish. So if the soul is taken away from an opportunity to serve, then again, it has to return to the material world to serve the senses. So Prabodhananda Saraswati says, Kaivalya Narakayati, a hellish condition is this impersonal liberation. And Srinivasa Acharya, his grand disciple, is singing in Shat Goswami Ashtaka, Anandam Buddhi Vardhaneka, that he's drowning the devotees in oceans of bliss through devotional service. The 6 Goswamis are. And they're saving us from the dangers of impersonal thought. This Shat Goswami Ashtaka is brilliantly written in Sanskrit, what's known as Dvivachana, which is the dual case. We don't have it in English, maybe it exists in other language conjugations. But Dvivachana means that the entire song is written as those two are doing this, this, and that. Those two are bringing us oceans of bliss. Anandam Budhivardhaneka Nipunao. This AU ending often denotes Dvivachana. And so he's pairing the 6 Goswamis in 3 groups of 2. Vande Rupa Sanatanao, Rupa and Sanatana. Vande Rupa Sanatanao, Raghu Yuga, the 2 Raghus, Raghunath